January 20th, 2017, President Donald J. Trump is sworn in as the 45th President of the United States of America. January 24th, 2017, the FBI sends 2 agents, Peter Strzok and Joe Pienka, to interview the new National Security Advisor, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, about a phone call he had on December 29, 2016 with the Russian ambassador to the U.S., Sergei Kislyak. February 13, 2017, Flynn resigned for allegedly lying about speaking with the Russian ambassador about sanctions during the transition, although the FBI has since said they didn't think he lied. On March 2, 2017, because of his involvement in the Trump campaign, and after great pressure, Attorney General Jeff Sessions recused himself from any investigations having to do with the Trump campaign and Russia, because he had attended a few events as a senator that Ambassador Kislyak had also attended. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein then took over the place of Attorney General Jeff Sessions in all things Russia. And from there on, the world would be taken on an emotional roller coaster.
Hillary Clinton is taking considerable criticism tonight for her criticism of almost everyone involved in her election loss last fall, except herself.
I inherit nothing from the Democratic Party.
Money was not her campaign's problem. Clinton raised nearly $1 billion and had one of the deepest coffers in American campaign history. Clinton went on to suggest that no one in the Obama administration would listen to her campaign's concerns that the Russians were interfering in the election.
Truth often poses a threat to power, and one often has to fight power at great risk to themselves.
They had evidence in the first few days that there was no collusion with Russia. There was nothing to do with Russia. They knew that immediately. He didn't have to take 2 or 2.5 years.
The Steele Dossier is named after MI6 officer Christopher Steele, who was paid by Hillary Clinton and the Democrats for the smears to be used by the Obama Justice Department to perpetrate a fraud upon the FISA court, the media, and the American people. While originally using the dossier as evidence of collusion, Democrats eventually tried to deny and downplay this after it was found to be very unreliable and false. Originally put together as an opposition research by the Clinton campaign and Democrat Party with significant backing and early work by Glenn Simpson, which was funneled to the Obama FBI and used to justify illegal surveillance on the 2016 Trump campaign and later as a basis for the Mueller investigation. A FISA is the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act of 1978. It's the United States federal law that establishes procedures for the physical and electronic surveillance and collection of foreign intelligence information between foreign powers and agents of foreign powers suspected of espionage or terrorism.
Obama himself used foreign intelligence to actually request surveillance on the 5th and 26th floor of Trump Tower. So to what extent was John Brennan behind that?
John Brennan, who sat before Congress and said the Steele Dossier, paid for by Hillary Clinton, paid for by the DNC, that document played no part of the role in opening the Russia probe, when in fact we know it did, when in fact we know it was the impetus testified before a FISA court for its truthfulness to spy on the Trump campaign. It's a real travesty and really one of the biggest political scandals in modern history.
Well, for years after the 2016 election, former Obama CIA chief John Brennan was unambiguous. Interview after interview, he told us the Steele Dossier played no role in the CIA's intelligence assessment of Russian interference in the 2016 election. Brennan, by the way, told Congress this under oath. Now the IG report indicates he was lying. John Kirikou is interested in what he said because he's a former CIA officer and a whistleblower who went to jail for doing less.
John Brennan was saying one thing on Capitol Hill and on MSNBC, where he's now a paid talking head, and saying another thing internally to his own people and Jim Comey, who was FBI director at the time. So we know that that John Durham, the U.S. attorney for the state of Connecticut, who's doing this investigation, has now asked for and will receive call logs, from John Brennan, emails from John Brennan during the time that he was the CIA director, as well as contemporaneous notes that Brennan took when he was meeting with these other leaders. We know that they lied to the FISA court. We know that they lied multiple times to the FISA court in order to renew the warrant against Carter Page. I think that they think they can just get away with it.
From March 18th, 2019, the late Senator John McCain and an associate shared with the FBI and a host of media outlets the unverified dossier that alleged that Russians had compromised information on then-candidate Trump. McCain had denied being the source of the BuzzFeed story, but acknowledged giving it to the FBI. Senior counterintelligence FBI agent Bill Priestap confirmed that the FBI received a copy of the first 33 pages of the dossier in December 2016 from McCain. David Kramer, a former State Department official and McCain associate, said in a December 13, 2017 deposition that the dossier was given to him by author and former British spy Christopher Steele, which he then provided to multiple journalists at outlets including CNN, BuzzFeed, and The Washington Post.
There was no there in August 2017. Do you agree with that general statement or not?
I agree with that general statement.
Thank you.
Top DOJ official Bruce Orr was demoted for having contacts with Glenn Simpson, Fusion GPS. House investigators have determined that Orr met shortly after the election with Glenn Simpson, the founder of Fusion GPS, the opposition research firm that hired Steele to compile the dossier with funds supplied by the Hillary Clinton campaign and DNC. By that point, according to the published reports, the dossier had been in the hands of the FBI for some 5 months, and the surveillance on Carter Page, an advisor to the Trump campaign, had started more than 2 months prior. And I bet you didn't know that Nellie Orr, married to Bruce Orr, worked for Fusion GPS, and she worked on the dossier with Christopher Steele. They all know each other. And of course, Bruce never reported the conflict of interest. FBI officials withheld negative information about Christopher Steele because of an agreement with the Brits. Bill Priestap, the FBI's former chief of counterintelligence, told Justice Department investigators he agreed not to disclose information he learned about Christopher Steele as a precondition for a meeting with British government officials regarding the former MI6 officer. Bill Priestap and his deputy Peter Strzok traveled to the United Kingdom in November and December of 2016 to assess the reliability of Steele. Priestap and Strzok embarked on the fact-finding mission weeks after the FBI had already used Steele's anti-Trump dossier to obtain Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act (FISA) order against Carter Page. They shared the assessment with the FBI team conducting the Trump probe, but did not include the information in Steele's so-called Delta file, which the FBI maintains for its confidential sources. Because the information was not in Steele's file, it was not used to assess Steele's validity as an FBI source for the Trump investigation. The FBI also did not share the information in 3 additional applications for FISA orders against Page. Priestap was asked during an interview with the IG why the negative Steele information was not included in his file or disclosed to the FISA court. He said that he may have made a commitment to Steele's former employer not to document the former employer's views on Steele as a condition for obtaining the information on the retired spy. The IG report provides a damning assessment of Steele's dossier. According to footnotes from the report, the FBI received evidence in early 2017 that Russian intelligence operatives might have fed disinformation to Steele that ended up in the dossier.
In January 2017 and in March 2017, they talked to the primary subsource, who was the sole conduit for this information that made up the dossier. And as I've said, the dossier pretty much collapsed at that point, and yet it continued to use it as a basis for pursuing this counterintelligence investigation.
Christopher Steele has been ordered to pay Alpha Bank partners for publishing inaccurate or misleading material in his infamous dossier, including claims the bank funneled illicit cash to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Christopher Steele's company, Orbis Business Intelligence, was ordered to pay 18,000 English pounds, or nearly 23,000 each, to two banks for violating Britain's Data Protection Act of 1998. In May 2017, President Trump fired FBI Director James Comey. The left and the media lost their friggin' minds. It was Nixon all over again, and clear obstruction of justice, according to the official narrative.
In particular, Senator, with regard to Mr. Comey's memoranda of his interviews with the president and with regard to the FBI's suspicions about the president, Mr. McCabe did not reveal those to me for at least a week after he became acting director, despite the fact that we had repeated conversations focusing on this investigation. And for whatever reasons, Mr. McCabe was not forthcoming with me about that.
Andrew McCabe took over as acting director of the FBI. Comey leaked a series of memos to an associate that then leaked them to the press. He admitted to Congress that he did it in order to spark a special counsel investigation, aka the Mueller probe. But we now know there was never any real basis for Mueller to be investigating Trump or his campaign.
American political leaders trampled democratic freedoms in the name of protecting them.
From the Washington Examiner on August 8, 2018. Emails show 2016 links among Steele, Orr, and Simpson with Russian oligarch in background. The emails show the links between Steele, Orr, and Simpson, and also show that Steele and Orr were advocating, or seemed to be, for Deripaska to be in the U.S. Interestingly, they also mention Deripaska's lawyer, Adam Waldman. In an email written from Steele to Orr, Steele said that he heard from Adam Waldman that Oleg Deripaska is applying for another official visa. Steele said Deripaska was being encouraged by the agency, who told Adam that the U.S. government stance on Deripaska is softening, and Steele concluded it was a positive development. Adam Waldman, that would be the lawyer for Johnny Depp and also Julian Assange. Isn't that interesting? I bet that guy knows quite a bit. And isn't it interesting with that whole wag the dog scenario and Johnny Depp, look here, not there? I remember that happening during times where, things were being confirmed as real and conspiracy theories were being proven as true. Back to the article, the emails raise a clear question of whether Steele was working directly or indirectly with Oleg Deripaska at the same time Steele was compiling the dossier, and whether the Justice Department, along with Simpson and Fusion GPS, was part of the project. Given Deripaska's place in the Russian power structure, what that means in the big picture is very unclear.
A former top FBI counterintelligence official is under arrest here in New York for allegedly trying to help get a Russian oligarch off the sanctions list and also dig up dirt on his political opponent. Charles McGonigal is one of the highest-ranking former FBI officials ever charged with the crime. He has pleaded not guilty. Is it he used to supervise investigations into Russian oligarchs, then went to allegedly work for and get paid a lot of money by Oleg Deripaska.
So this is the former top official running the New York FBI field office counterintelligence operation, preeminent position in the Bureau. Now, he is charged with violating money laundering and sanctions laws because of work he did once he left the Bureau. He started working for Oleg Deripaska. He is a sanctioned Russian oligarch because of his close ties to Russian President Vladimir Putin. And what authorities say is that, as you said, he supervised investigations into oligarchs, including into Deripaska, and then immediately went and started working for him after he retired. They say that he was hired to dig up dirt on a rival of Deripaska's, and that he hid this relationship by using a shell company and forging signatures to try to keep the path away from him so no one could detect this. But that wasn't just it. He was also charged yesterday by prosecutors in Washington, D.C. with failing to disclose $225,000 payment he received from a former employee of an Albanian intelligence agency, and that payment was while he was still in that top post at the Bureau.
Wow.
He was still in charge of counterintel. He received this payment, and he also, according to the indictment, failed to disclose trips he took to Europe with this individual who was a former intel official in Albania, and also failed to disclose meetings he had with the Albanian prime minister and other politicians overseas. That's all required when you work for the FBI. Of course.
Weissman leaves out the fact that the guy who was arrested yesterday, the FBI guy, for his alleged ties to this guy, Deripaska, he leaves out all the important stuff about their ties to Democrats and SpyGate. For instance, just a couple of things here. He leaves out that the dossier author, where the Russia hoax first appears, Christopher Steele, has known Deripaska since 2012. He leaves out that Steele was a middleman for a meeting between Deripaska and the FBI in 2015. And who was involved in that meeting as well? A DOJ official Weissman knew by the name of Bruce Orr, whose wife worked for Fusion GPS, who Christopher Steele was working for to create the Russia hoax. It's strange how Weissman leaves all that out. He leaves out that Deripaska was also connected to a powerful Senate Democrat who was the ranking member of the Senate Intel Committee that was knee-deep in the Russia hoax, Mark Warner.
In an article written June 22, 2018 in Mother Jones, messages between Senator Mark Warner, a Democrat of Virginia, and a Washington-based attorney named Adam Waldman. Waldman had unsuccessfully sought to put Warner, the top Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, in touch with Christopher Steele. But the text revealed that Waldman had initially approached Warner on behalf of Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, attempting on a pro bono basis to help Assange cut a deal with the Justice Department. All this while he was also representing Deripaska, who is an aluminum magnate, on a $40,000 a month contract, while Deripaska himself was seeking an immunity deal from Congress in exchange for his testimony related to the Russia scandal.
Mark Warner texted with a lobbyist with Russia ties to get in touch with the dossier author. And who are they tied to? There you go, Russian billionaire Oleg Deripaska. So weird how the guy locked up yesterday is connected to a Russian, connected to key Democrats, the FBI, and Justice Department figures, also connected to Fusion GPS, the Russia PP tape guys. Charles McGonigal named the special agent in charge of the counterintelligence division for the New York office. Oh, who named him? Jim Comey had to put his buddy in charge of that in 2016. Now, this is very important. October of 2016. Comey replaces the New York field office counterintelligence guy, again, an office knee-deep in SpyGate, just weeks before Christopher Steele starts working with the media about the whole Russia hoax thing. And just days before Jim Clapper and others go out and start promoting the DNC hack. Kind of good to have a guy in charge of the New York counterintelligence division. Here's McGonigal on stage the day Jim Comey was fired.
And thank you all for being here this evening. I know you're committed to hearing a lot about counterintelligence. On a sad note, though, my colleague and I share the fact with you that our director, James Comey, was just summarily fired by the president at the Attorney General's recommendation this evening. So James Comey has been officially fired as FBI director. I know Bill shares in this. I think we both felt that Director Comey was probably one of the most loved leaders that we've had in a number of years, commanding a leadership role in the FBI. And I think, appreciate that. I think many of us who were nominated for leadership positions by him will forever hold him in esteem as we progress through our FBI careers.
He really seems to love him some Jim Comey. Thanks him for his career. Put him in charge of the most important counterintelligence field office in the entire country. And he's on stage with his other buddy, William Evanina. Washington Times, reported in December of 2020. Bill Evanina, the director of U.S. counterintelligence, said Wednesday, again, this is back in 2020, that the federal government's coordinated work with social media companies ahead of the 2020 election will provide a playbook for fighting foreign influence in the future. You really? The FBI's work with social media companies in 2020? You mean like squashing the Hunter Biden story about the laptop?
Normally, politicians are warned in a defense briefing by the intelligence community if they've unknowingly come into contact with someone who possesses a threat to them, but Trump was never given a defense briefing. So why? Was it planned? When Paul Manafort was convicted, he went into jail and he was in solitary confinement, and it was a big drama. I kept thinking how weird it was to put an old man in solitary confinement over financial crimes. He was never convicted for anything that had to do with collusion with Russians. Was he really in solitary confinement? How would you hide that a prisoner wasn't really there? And Carter Page, he fought the law and he won without a lawyer. Were they planted? Carter Page never played a major role in the Trump team, and he was never charged with a crime by Robert Mueller. Why? Well, he wasn't a Russian spy. He was actually an FBI asset.
You signed a warrant application in June of, I think, 2017 to get the Carter Page warrant renewed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Have you looked at the Horowitz report?
Yes, I have. I have it with me, Senator.
If you knew then what you know now, would you have signed the warrant application?
No, I would not.
Okay. And the reason you wouldn't have is because Mr. Horowitz found that exculpatory information was withheld from the court. Is that correct?
Among other reasons, yes.
Yeah, sir. And somebody actually altered an email.
Correct.
Right. So there were 17 violations that Mr. Horowitz found, but I can't stress enough to the country that he found the dossier was the only reason the Carter Page warrant was issued to begin with. And in January 2017, the man who provided Steele with all the information told the FBI it was a bunch of garbage, and they used it twice more. What kind of country is this? What happens to people who do that? Did you know that? You didn't know that, did you?
No, sir.
Do you think McCabe knew that?
I hope not.
And it's a disgrace. The Obama administration, Justice Department was a disgrace. And they got caught. They got caught. Very dishonest people. But much more than this. It's treason. It's treason.
Because this was a very important element, which is ultimately what have the prosecutions been on? Paul Manafort for a bunch of very sketchy and illegal things that he did before working for Donald Trump. His associate, Mr. Gates, Roger Stone, and Michael Flynn. And all of these have essentially come down to, in Stone and Flynn's case, we're talking about process crimes of lying to the FBI in the course of their investigation. And now we know that the FBI was basically trying to bait them into doing that in the first place.
Yeah, Papadopoulos, I would add to that.
Oh, right, Papadopoulos.
Right, where, again, and the crime in that instance was, he was off by a week in his recollection of when he started working for the Trump campaign.
George Papadopoulos told the FBI informer that the Trump campaign wasn't involved in the DNC hack, and they withheld it on multiple FISA applications. Sometimes with salty language, Papadopoulos repeatedly denied in the transcript any involvement by the Trump campaign in the DNC email hack or Russian election rigging. The confidential human source said, "You think anyone from the Trump campaign had anything to do with effing over at the DNC?" Papadopoulos said no. Later in the transcript, Papadopoulos said that he told a more senior political player that the Trump campaign had nothing to do with the DNC hack. It's illegal, to do that shit. In his December 2019 report, Inspector General Michael Horowitz criticized the FBI for failing to include evidence that could undermine its FISA warrant applications, but he also noted that the FBI had discounted Papadopoulos' denial for a number of reasons, including believing it to be rehearsed. However, Horowitz maintained that all evidence should have been presented.
That comment in a London wine bar was what the basis really was for going forward. And I've said that I thought that was a very slender reed to get law enforcement and intelligence agencies involved in investigating the campaign of one's political opponent.
Papadopoulos made the following material false statements to the FBI, and this is what he was charged with. Papadopoulos claimed that his interactions with Joseph Massoud, who was an overseas professor and allegedly had substantial ties to the Russian government. Papadopoulos said that his interactions with Massoud happened before he became part of the Trump campaign, but it was actually like a week after. He also screwed up the dates on meetings with a female alleged Russian national as well, or something like that.
I know that the FBI said that they started a counterintelligence investigation into the Trump campaign in July of 2016. But there's a lot of activity before that. And in April of 2016, people arranged for George Papadopoulos to meet with Joseph Massoud. Has Joseph Massoud worked with Western intelligence before?
I can't get into that.
I mean, I asked because we talked about that bar conversation between Papadopoulos and someone else, and you have to wonder, was that conversation organic, or was that conversation and the content of what Papadopoulos said planted on him?
People are looking at that. It's significant also that the dossier was initiated before July.
Wait, what? Joseph Massoud of the London Academy of Diplomacy, originally from Malta, allegedly told Papadopoulos that he had Russian dirt on Hillary Clinton in April of 2016, a conversation that he carelessly conveyed to Australian national Alexander Downer, who then informed the FBI, so technically an FBI informant, over drinks at a bar. Oddly enough, weeks later, there were hacked emails from the DNC that were leaked through WikiLeaks. Papadopoulos pled guilty to getting the dates mixed up, and he was charged for lying to the FBI in doing so, and sentenced with 14 days in jail, as well as 12 months of supervised release, 200 hours of community service, and also fined $9,500. 2 months before the 2016 election, Papadopoulos reportedly was contacted by a University of Cambridge professor and member of Cambridge Intelligence Seminars, which was founded by the British intelligence agencies, by the name of Stefan Helper, who reportedly was a public supporter of Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. Helper asked Papadopoulos to come to London to discuss international relations, and possibly Papadopoulos writing a paper on a gas field in the Mediterranean for $3,000. But once they met, Helper wanted to ask Papadopoulos about Hillary Clinton's email hack. But Papadopoulos didn't take the bait, and they didn't have much contact afterwards. Helper brought an assistant, or a woman who was posing to be his assistant, named Azra Turk, or that's who she said she was. She's actually an FBI informant. However, PDOP has tweeted that Azra Turk was clearly not FBI. He thinks she was CIA and affiliated with Turkish intel. Helper also had contacts with Carter Page, and he also pitched himself as an ambassador to China for the Trump team. It's been recently revealed that Helper was contracted by the Office of Net Assessment, including 2 that spanned the same time period as Crossfire Hurricane, which is the nickname given to the FBI's investigation into the Trump campaign. Senator Grassley has sent a letter inquiring about what Stefan Helper's relationship is with a man named Vyacheslav Trubnikov, who is a known source for Steele's dossier, which was revealed in handwritten notes by the State Department. Helper listed Trubnikov as a reference for one of his ONA contacts. Trubnikov was a Russian journalist, political scientist, intelligence officer, and diplomat. He worked as the director of Foreign Intelligence Service for Russia and was first deputy of foreign minister for Russia. He was also appointed by Vladimir Putin in 2004 to be the ambassador of Russia to India. He He was a senior network member of the European Leadership Network, and he died on April 18th, 2022. Steele cited Trebnikov as one of his sources to Kathleen Kavalek at the State Department just 10 days before the write-up of the FISA warrant. On her handwritten notes, she writes the sources of Steele's dossier under the word July. The names are Surkov and Trebnikov. It would seem Trebnikov is Halper's contact. So did Halper write part of the dossier? It's possible. And if he did, was he getting paid with our tax dollars to do it? Did we also pay for the opposition research to spy on the Trump campaign? Hey, I'm just asking questions. How many other times did the FBI try to insert informants into the Trump administration? Think leaks.
It's not just about what leaked, the transcripts that leaked on General Flynn. It's also about the transcripts that Donald Trump talking to the Mexican president, talking to the Australian prime minister, those also leaked.
These close connections between the Washington Post's David Ignatius and people connected to U.S. and U.K. intelligence raise grave concerns about the deep state using media to push propaganda. In a court filing in January 2020, General Michael Flynn's counsel, Sidney Powell, highlighted how the CIA, FBI, Stefan Halper, and possibly James Baker used the unnamed and unaware Lakova and the complicit Ignatius to destroy Flynn. This James Baker is not the one who worked under James Comey at the FBI, but James Baker in the Department of Defense Office of National Assessment. Powell wrote, Stefan Halper is a known longtime operative for the CIA FBI. He was paid by the FBI, CIA, DoD through the Department of Defense Department's Office of Net Assessments in 2016. His tasks seem to have included slandering Mr. Flynn with accusations of having an affair with a young professor, a British national of Russian descent, named Svetlana Lakova. Flynn met at an official dinner at Cambridge University when he was head of DIA in 2014. Flynn has requested the records of Colonel James Baker because he was Halper's handler in the Office of Net Assessment in the Pentagon, and ONA Director Baker regularly lunched with Washington Post reporter David Ignatius. Baker is believed to be the person who illegally leaked the transcript of Mr. Flynn's call to Ignatius. The defense has requested the phone records of James Clapper to confirm his contacts with Washington Post reporter Ignatius, especially on January 10, 2017, when Clapper told Ignatius in words to the effect of, "Take the kill shot on Flynn." It cannot escape mention that the press has long had transcripts of the Kislyak calls that the government has denied to the defense. Wow.
Meanwhile, Congress conducted its own witch hunt, subpoenaing hundreds of people to testify before investigative bodies.
We will be putting together a report that will set out for the country what evidence we have seen to date. What evidence we have seen in terms of the Russian hacking and dumping operation, what evidence we have seen in terms of the Russian social media campaign, their paid media campaign.
And yes, the issue of collusion with the Trump campaign. There is significant evidence, much of it in the public domain, on the issue of collusion.
It had ruined hundreds, if not thousands of lives, and drastically narrowed the American political spectrum. Its damage to democratic institutions would be long-lasting.
From The Intercept, Robert Mueller did not merely reject the Trump-Russia conspiracy theories, he obliterated them. Regarding one of the most cited pieces of evidence by Trump-Russia conspiracists, that Russia tried once Trump was nominated to shape his foreign policy posture towards Russia, Mueller concluded that there is simply no evidence to support it. He also found that the investigation did not identify evidence that any U.S. persons knowingly or intentionally coordinated with the Russian Internet Research Agency interference operation.
I saw no direct evidence of political collusion between the campaign and the Trump campaign and the Russians.
Now clarify that point,
That's
Mr.
not to say
Clapper.
there wasn't any, but I just didn't see evidence of it before I left.
Even though Robert Mueller throws all kinds of shade all over President Trump within the report, he still says the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. Mueller's examination of all the so-called links between Trump campaign officials and Russia that the U.S. media has spent almost 3 years depicting as bombshell evidence of criminality met the same fate. The evidence could not and did not establish that any such links constituted coordination or conspiracy between Trump and Russia.
Do you agree with me that finding her liable criminally would be inconsistent with stopping Donald Trump? If they found Hillary Clinton was criminally liable, that paves the way for Donald Trump. Can you put those two things together?
I guess it would depend when, but yes, I could
How about
see
July,
conceivably
a
it
week
could.
before the convention?
Oh, it clearly could conceivably.
Well, not only clearly conceivably, that's exactly what's happening here, folks. You cannot hold her criminally liable and stop him.
Former Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates hid from Congress during a November 2017 interview that she first learned about former National Security Advisor Lieutenant General Michael Flynn's calls with the Russian ambassador from then President Obama, but had confirmed it to the special counsel Robert Mueller's team 3 months earlier.
Well, somebody's lying.
Her different answers suggest that she lied or tried to obscure to members of Congress that Obama was involved and briefed on intimate details of his administration's effort to investigate and target Flynn. During her interview with the House Intelligence Committee on November 3, 2017, she was asked how she first learned about Flynn's calls with then Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. She said she learned it from the FBI, the NSD, and the Justice Department. But just 3 months earlier, on August 15, 2017, she told special counsel investigators that Obama was the one who told her about Flynn's calls with Kislyak during a White House meeting early January of the same year. Susan Rice flat out lied. Her testimony in 2017 was false, as proved by the February 2018 release of her CYA letter. Congressman Schiff asked her, would Director Comey brief you on the progress of this investigation? And Ms. Rice says, no, so just, I think it's important for everybody to understand we were not informed by Director Comey or the Attorney General that there was an active investigation of anybody in the Trump orbit. Are you sure about that, Ms. Rice? Because you said in your memorandum that you memorialized an important national security discussion between President Obama, the FBI Director, and the Deputy Attorney General. You said President Obama and his national security team were justifiably concerned about potential risks to the national security of sharing highly classified information about Russia with certain members of the Trump transition team, particularly Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. So I'm really confused. Which is it?
Trump's not ever going to become president, right? Right? Strzok responded, no, he's not. We'll stop it. Now, I don't know how you feel about that. That's pretty unnerving. Strzok, wasn't he the lead investigator of the Clinton email investigation?
He was, in essence, the lead investigator.
Okay, so the head guy looking at Clinton on August the 8th says we got to stop Trump.
So Peter Strzok is the agent many of you know, was the operational working agent on the plot to take down Trump. So Peter Strzok had a girlfriend in the FBI. Her name was Lisa Page. She was an FBI lawyer who worked for Andrew McCabe. They were having an affair at the time, and all of their text messages, as you well know, became public. Now, only for about 2.5+ years now, I have been dying to know who Charlie was. Why? Because in this mysterious Strzok text to Lisa Page, Keep in mind, this is after Donald Trump is president. They're working, it appears, through this text exchange to try and get a source in Donald Trump's White House. And they're talking about Mike Pence's chief of staff, whose wife worked for Strzok. So like, maybe Katie's husband and all this. And then they say in the text, I'm talking with Bill. Do we want Joe to go with Evanina? Evanina, that's the guy who was just on stage with McGonigal. Do we want Joe to go with Evanina instead of Charlie for a number of reasons? Who the hell's Charlie? Not sure, Page responds. Would it be unusual to have him show up again? Maybe another agent from the team? Is Charlie McGonigal? Did they want Charlie McGonigal to be part of a spying operation, being that he's only the counter intel guy from New York? Did they want him to be part of an operation to spy on the White House somehow? What is going on here? Who exactly was involved in this operation to spy on Donald Trump and to squash Hunter Biden information from getting out before the election?
Strzok text message to Lisa Page. I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there's no way he gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk. It's like an insurance policy in the unlikely event you die before you're 40. Now, that's a week later. Who's Andy?
Our understanding, it was Andy McCabe, the deputy director.
So you got the deputy director meeting with the lead investigator of the Clinton email investigation, and Miss Page, who's involved somehow, meeting in Andy's office discussing taking out an insurance policy to make sure Donald Trump doesn't become president?
This from Tracy Beans from Undercover DC. Perkins Coie engaged Fusion GPS to provide information to challenge the 2016 election validity. In a UK court paper, Steele's firm Orbis claims Perkins Coie engaged Fusion GPS to provide information on Russian interference in order to challenge 2016 election results. This kind of sounds like an insurance policy in the event that you die before you're 40. Director Comey told the House Intelligence Committee that Clapper briefed Obama on the Flynn call, and under oath, Clapper told the same committee he didn't brief Obama on the Flynn call. And they've both attacked Bill Barr for allowing Flynn to lie. Well, the FBI agents that interviewed Flynn both said that they didn't think he lied.
President Trump has officially pardoned Michael Flynn. This move is basically taking direct aim in the final days of his administration at a Russia investigation that he has long insisted was motivated by political bias. President Trump saying, "It's my honor to announce that General Michael T. Flynn has been granted a full pardon. Congratulations to Flynn and his wonderful family. I know you will now have a truly fantastic Thanksgiving."
The initial sentencing recommendation accuses me of aiding foreign interference in the American election. I was not charged with that. I am not found guilty of that, and there is no evidence of that.
Breaking news. Roger Stone is a free man after President Trump commuted the sentence of his longtime friend and advisor. Stone was set to begin a 40-month sentence, but the president has claimed his friend was the victim of what he called the Russia hoax. Stone reacted to the news outside his house.
I had a very gracious call from the President of the United States, who told me that he had decided to use his extraordinary powers of clemency to commute my sentence, what he called a full commutation.
More from the Department of Justice. Bill Barr has appointed the special counsel John Durham to keep on the job to investigate the Russia probe origins under the new administration. That again, according to the Associated Press. So this is a special counsel.
This is just one piece of a very dishonest puzzle.
The truth is the most important value we have, because if the truth does not endure, if the government murders truth, if we cannot respect the hearts of these people, then this is not the country in which I was born in, and it's certainly not the country that I want to die in. Show this world that this is still a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. Nothing as long as you live will ever be more important.